Story 1. I will buy myself an ice cream cake on a random trip to the grocery store, just because I can. Story 2. Hookers and blow. There is nothing better than sitting in front of my fan and doing crochet. Story 3. I have lots of Halloween and Christmas decorations because we did not celebrate those holidays for religious reasons. I also have chocolate cake whenever I want, because cake does not have to be a once-a-year birthday treat. Story 4. I found a beautiful 1950s prom dress at a thrift store. My mother always told me buying anything pretty for me was like putting lipstick on a pig. When I saw this dress, it was a serious struggle between her voice and mine about buying it. I won. Story 5. When I bought my first fridge, I bought 2 sets of alphabet magnets. Many people with children use them as a learning tool, but mine usually spell out profanities and poetry. I love them. Story 6. On my 50th birthday, I bought Nutella and Pop-Tarts. My parents did not like those, so they never bought them. Nutella was very thick and difficult to spread. I thought it was overly sweet. I could not finish my first jar. Pop-Tarts are awesome. Story 7. Feeding the giraffes at the zoo. It is over in a second. No, totally worth it. Story 8. Breyer horses. I only had a couple, but that still meant a lot. I always received hand-me-down cheap toys, if any, because I was an unwanted pest. I dreamed of having my own Breyer horses, but people laughed and said no one would give someone like me something that valuable. Well, to my former foster homes, I am giving someone like me something that valuable. Story 9. I went to a gynecologist to get help with my debilitating menstrual periods. I also had my impacted wisdom teeth removed. Story 10. I wanted my own clothes because I always had my brother's hand-me-downs. As a teen who loved fashion and aspired to be a fashion designer, I bought a lot of girly clothes. Story 11. I chose a stuffed elephant as a souvenir from the gift shop at the zoo. His name is Ganesha, and he lives next to my computer. Story 12. A 64-pack of Crayola crayons with a built-in sharpener sits on my desk at work. Story 13. My computer has a dedicated graphics card. Microsoft Excel opens much faster now. Story 14. The first time I went to Disneyland as an adult, I passed a Dole Whip earlier in the day but did not try it. When we passed it again, I thought, I have always wanted to try that. Wait, I am an adult with adult money. Fuck it, I am getting one. Now it is a tradition. Every time I go, I get a float. Story 15. Nerf N-Series Infinite Blaster featuring an Arctic Zero Striker loadout, a zombie corruptor dart switch out option, a maximum load capacity, and a crankshaft mounted on the side to optimize clip reload speed. Story 16. Jelly Slippers. I later discovered they are very uncomfortable until they are broken in. Story 17. When we were dating, I once told my husband how much I had wanted a stuffed animal as a child and how I spent my coins at the local carnival on Midway games to win plush toys. My mother never bought us stuffed animals. She called them nothing but a waste of money and dust collectors. For our first Christmas together, my husband surprised me with a plush pig that oinked, "Jingle bells," when you pressed its belly. Ever since then, instead of flowers, which make me sad when they die, he gives me a stuffed toy as a romantic gift. Story 18. For my 18th birthday, I had an ice cream cake. My mother had never allowed one because she did not like them. I called her that day to tell her I was eating the cake and that she could not stop me because I was an adult. Story 19. When I was a child, my grandmother always kept cans of Cool Whip in her refrigerator. She would only let me have a little, always saying I would get a stomach ache if I had too much. In my first semester of college, I went grocery shopping alone and saw the Cool Whip. It occurred to me that I could do whatever I wanted now that I was an adult, so I bought a container. I went home and ate the whole container in one sitting. She was right. It made me very sick. Story 20. A PlayStation. Circa 1998, I asked my parents for a PlayStation 1, but being a poor household, all they could afford was a family computer. I appreciated that. I remember drawing the PlayStation 1 console and the controller because it looked really cool. At the time, computer shops were popular, and they sold consoles like the PlayStation 1, the Sega Saturn, and the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. I used to spend my school lunch money at those shops. When I was 22, I got a job that enabled me to afford a second-hand PlayStation 2. Achievement unlocked. I also bought a cool balisong knife. Story 21 Butter. My parents believed butter was bad for you, so they bought the cheapest low-quality margarine spread possible. They also bought only 1% milk. The minute I was kicked out and on my own, it was butter and whole milk. Same price, 10 times the nutritional value. Story 22 Sushi. My dad came from another generation and saw it as a surefire way to get sick, so we were not allowed to have it growing up. I first tried it in my senior year of high school and went a little overboard with it in college. Story 23 Ballet Slippers. When I was little, I was obsessed with ballerinas. I wanted to be a ballet dancer so badly. My mom wouldn't put me in dance class because she said I was too tall. I am 5 feet 7 inches now. Once when we were shopping, she let me into a shoe store to look at the ballet slippers in the box. But that was it. Last year, I bought inexpensive point shoes from Amazon. I'm smart enough to know I don't have the ankle strength or training to actually stand end point, but I like to put them on and do a little ply or two. Maybe the next step is to work up the courage to take some adult classes. Story 24. I remember eating in a restaurant only twice. Cold cuts. Story 25. Golden Grahams and Quaker Oat squares. My brother liked sweet, fruity cereals. I did not. I grew up in a very southern home where boys mattered more. I preferred raspberry preserves, but my family preferred grape jelly. I wanted clothes that suited my figure. Story 26. A lava lamp serves absolutely no purpose, but it heals my inner 12-year-old every time it bubbles. Story 27. I read the Harry Potter series as an adult because my Christian parents did not let me read them as a kid. Story 28. A guide badge and a service flash. I completed 18 months of service in total. The badge required 6 months, but I still did not receive it. As a youth leader now, I make sure all the young people receive their badges promptly once earned. Story 29. Proper apples. My mom bought mealy red delicious apples from the store every week. They were disgusting. Beautiful pink lady apples were right there. Story 30. I needed new shoes for work and was lamenting that I could not afford Doc Martens. Then I thought to myself, wait, I'm an adult. I have cash. I can get whatever shoes I want. 10 minutes later, I had my first pair of Doc Martens. Story 31. I bought a horse, and my mother objected. I told her it was a done deal. I am an adult and I decide how I am going to spend my money. Bluenose passed away a few years ago. I have no regrets, but I am still not ready to get another. Story 32. It was kind of weird, but I wanted hamburger helper. I do not remember which one because that was many years ago. My mother was always insulted when I asked for it, but it was my kitchen now and my rules. Story 33. Kiwis and mangoes. My mom refused to buy any foods she did not like, which included those two. As an adult, I will happily smash both. Story 34. Food I wanted and liked. Clothes and shoes that fit and were not hand-me-downs. Story 35. I bought tickets to the concert my parents were convinced would be full of druggies and predators. The crowd was actually just a group of emo girls my age, and it was, ironically, one of the least drug-related concerts I have ever attended. Story 36. I did not buy them. I adopted 2 kittens the moment I felt stable enough because I was never allowed a pet as a child. Story 37. I got my ears double pierced when I returned to college after Christmas break my freshman year. My parents were overseas and did not see me again until July. By then I was so used to the piercings that I did not think much of them. My parents were shocked and stared at my ears. I looked behind me trying to see what they were looking at. I finally asked, and they shouted, "Your ears!" I asked, "Why?" They said I had them pierced again. I said, "Oh yes." Story 38. We had a puppy briefly, but he chewed on things, so my mom returned him. She knew nothing about training dogs and did not care. Story 39. I bought my daughter one of those electric ride-on cars because I remember wanting one so badly and never owning one. Cost about 200 pounds. The smile on her face when she is zooming around and causing chaos is priceless. Story 40. One of the first things I bought for myself with adult money was a cell phone when I was 18, around 2004. Such items were far too extravagant for my family to buy then, and I wanted my own. Story 41. A golden retriever. Too much fur, Mom said. Worth it, I say now. Story 42. My parents put me in a youth employment program when I was 14. I spent all summer working full-time for minimum wage. With part of my first paycheck, I bought a used Coleman canoe at a yard sale. My parents beat me for it and were angry that it could not be returned. They prevented me from using it by chaining it with a lock in the garage attic. We had a 1-acre beaver pond where I swam and fished and used a broken sailboat hull like a canoe. They then confiscated and sold the broken fiberglass hull I had bought for $10 at a yard sale when I was 12. I was not allowed to go anywhere to spend money that summer, so it was saved in the bank. The day after my last check was deposited, my mother cleaned out the account to go on a shopping spree for herself. She beat me and called me a selfish bastard when I was upset about it. When I moved out at 18, I lived in my car, then rented a house near a large state wetland preserve. My parents refused to let me get my canoe and would rub it in any time they could to bully me, a game of keep away. Many years later, after a long estrangement from my relatives, I am now in my 40s. I have a private pond on my farm and I have a canoe. I cannot really use it because of a back injury, but I have one. Story 43. My parents weren't the sort of people to go out and do things. Then I started going on day trips and playing tourist. Hearing about places and being able to plan a day trip to see them and shop for souvenirs felt exciting. Suddenly I felt like I had big goals and things to look forward to. Story 44. A dog. I have had a golden retriever sidekick for more than 30 years. Story 45. I took beginning ballet as an elective at community college because I never had the ballet lessons I wanted as a child. It was awesome. Story 46. I started buying Lego sets because I wasn't allowed to have them as a child, since they were considered boys' toys. Now I have many sets and use them for stress relief. Story 47. A heated blanket. I was never allowed one as a kid. My dad said it was a fire hazard. Maybe he was right, but I love mine. Story 48. As a kid, only my brother was allowed to play with Pokemon because it was a boy thing. As an adult, I have a very expensive EV figure collection displayed above my desk. Story 49. It was not that I was not allowed pizza as a child. We lived in a very rural area, so pizza delivery was not an option. Pizza delivery. Even now, after living within city limits for many years, it is still a novelty to order pizza and have it dropped off on my porch, laughing out loud. Story 50. Coloring books. I know I'm too old for them at 47, but I was never allowed to waste money on them growing up. Now every time I get a new one, I cry for that little girl. Story 51. My friends had nice bikes in high school, and my mom bought ours at thrift stores. My kids' bikes are excessive. Story 52. I recently bought Weebles and was laughing out loud. I'm in my 50s. I never had toys growing up and was envious when other kids had Weebles. The commercials were popular in the 1970s. I have the Weebles camper on my dining room table and play with it every other day. My husband chuckles but is supportive. He is glad something so simple makes me happy. Story 53. One of these days, when I finally find one at the store, I am going to buy a Viennetta ice cream treat. Story 54. Buying a TV for the first time was really cool. I never had one in my room growing up, so it felt like a big deal when I moved into my own place and set up the TV in the living room. Story 55. I have 2 dogs and 6 reptiles now. It might have become an addiction. Story 56. Jordans. I had good Velcro sneakers as a kid and then cheap ones later. A few years back I saw the film Air and said, you know what? I'm finally getting some. Story 57. Slip-on shoes. Growing up, my brother and I were not allowed to wear slip-on, zip-up, or Velcro shoes. My mother felt they looked lazy and unkempt and were only for children who could not tie their own shoes or for parents who could not be bothered to look after their children. It had to be laces or buckles. Nothing else was allowed. When I was 16, I bought a pair with my own money and she went behind my back and returned them because she declared that no child of hers would go out in public wearing Velcro shoes, and she used a derogatory slur. Story 58. Ketchup and mayonnaise. We had mustard and chili sauce, tomato sauce with onions and spices, and Miracle Whip, but when I asked if we could get ketchup or mayonnaise, I was told that they didn't use those and that they used chili sauce and Miracle Whip. The way my mother said it made it sound like God's plan revealed to her and, therefore, not to be questioned. So when we went to a relative's for Thanksgiving or other occasions, I knew I could not ask for ketchup or mayonnaise without inviting holy disapproval in the form of my mother's hand across my butt, being sent to a back room, and being denied dinner for my disobedience. So when I bought kitchen supplies for my first apartment, you can bet that ketchup and mayonnaise were among my first purchases. Story 59. Alcohol. Not just because, obviously, children should not drink, but because I was raised Mormon. I was taught that drinking made you evil or some such nonsense. The first time I had a drink, I was surprised by how mild the experience was. I had been taught to fear alcohol instead of learning to be responsible with it. Fortunately, I was already in my 30s before I drank and had learned enough elsewhere to be sensible about it. Story 60. Car beds and bunk beds for my kids, a dog, and Lucky Charms. Story 61. A horse was all I ever asked for as a kid. Poor mom. Story 62. Fucking cookie cake from the Great American Cookie Company for my birthday. Story 63. The Twilight series. I read the books as a child, but my father mocked me relentlessly, so I had to hide them while I read. It is nice to be able to do things I like and read what I want, even if they are ridiculous, without being made fun of. Story 64. I am highly allergic to multiple food dyes. Tang can send me to the hospital, but over the years I have narrowed it down and I can safely drink grape Kool-Aid. Story 65. Sugary cereals. Have you, ice cream deprived kids, ever put Cocoa Pebbles on your ice cream? Story 66. We were never allowed to have canned peaches because they were for my dad's lunches. The good cereal was off limits too. My parents always bought me things like Weetabix or puffed wheat, while my sisters had cereal with marshmallows. Story 67. It was not that they were forbidden. They simply did not exist. I got a weighted stuffed dinosaur. I sleep with it against my stomach or use it as extra lumbar support when lying on my side. I love the range of weighted stuffed animals available today. Neurodivergent children have many more options and support than when I was a child. Story 68. Heat. I remember the first time I realized I could keep my apartment nice and toasty. Story 69. I bought a Fudgy the Whale ice cream cake. 2 other stoner friends and I ate the entire cake and felt terrible the next morning. Story 70. Chocolate ice cream cone. As a child, I was only allowed vanilla or pistachio, depending on my mother's whim. Now I eat some form of chocolate almost every day and enjoy Coca-Cola, other soft drinks, and pizza, none of which I was ever allowed to have then. Story 71. A television of my own. This was in 1979 as I was moving out of my parents' house and into graduate student housing. Story 72. I bought a full box of Magic: The Gathering booster packs and opened them all in one sitting. My 8-year-old self would be so jealous. Story 73. I bought a Castle Grayskull and He-Man action figure set for my boyfriend one Christmas. He grew up pretty poor and always wanted one. Story 74. My dream pillow is a horseshoe-shaped pregnancy pillow. I am not pregnant, but I love having gentle pressure around me on all sides. My husband gets about 1/3 of the bed, but he bought me the pillow so I do not feel as bad. Story 75. I have a pair of retro Jordans. Not even my favorite pair, but a friend gifted me an old pair he had, a Jordan 6 denim. He passed away and we never learned what happened, so I bought my first pair of Jordan 6s in his memory. I also had a bike. When we were kids, another friend stole a bike and gave it to me. It was later stolen. Riding with my friends was the best feeling. The sense of freedom never grew old. I never had my own room growing up, so when I finally got my own apartment, I almost cried. The bathroom became my only private space. Even today, I often find solace in the bathroom and I sometimes study there. Story 76. Real Dr. Martens. I do not wear them that much, but I am happy knowing they are there. Story 77, Lego and Star Wars stuff. I never got any because it was a boy toy. Story 78, at my primary school in New Zealand, a wedge of the Laughing Cow cheese was extremely prized and far more expensive than regular cheese. My mother could never afford it. Now I live in Canada and buy the Laughing Cow at Costco, and I eat a wedge every day. It is a real I have made it moment. Story 79, Captain Crunch Peanut Butter Cereal. My entire freshman 15 came from that. Story 80, I always wanted a Papasan chair, but it seemed a frivolous expense. Now I am using it as my office chair and laughing out loud. Story 81. It is a fancy soap that smells of coconut and contains little grains. Costs $6, but it used to be available only once a year. Now I can just buy it whenever I want. Story 82. When I was 18, I went to a real hair salon for the first time. My mom would only ever pay for places like Supercuts. Story 83. My parents could not afford to get me braces for my teeth. I got them for myself in my 30s. Story 84. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Once I got to college, I had a box at all times. Story 85. I didn't have my own clothes. My mom always got me hand-me-downs from cousins and aunts. The first time I bought clothes for myself, she threw a fit, saying it was a waste. I had simply wanted new clothes of my own. Story 86. I just bought a wardrobe that suits my style. I was always told I was too fat to be cute and that goths cannot be grown up. My new wardrobe says otherwise, Mom. Story 87. Lego Titanic. I have made it to the last book 17 hours in, and no regrets. I am absolutely thrilled. As a parent, once it is built, I will play with it with my son. Will it break? Probably, but I have waited my whole life for this. I will build it again if I have to. Story 88. I joined an adult hockey league at 30. I was allowed to skate, but playing hockey was never going to happen when I was a kid. Story 89. A magnet with my name on it. All the other children at school had items with their names on them. Stickers, bike license plates, pencils, and so on. I never had anything like that because my name is not very common. I understand that the others received those items as gifts from people who did not really know them but felt obligated to buy a present. I searched every kiosk in every store I visited. I still do, looking for anything with my name on it. When I was 25 years old, I finally found a refrigerator magnet with my name on it at Kmart. I will cherish that magnet for the rest of my life. Story 90. A new mattress, comfortable shoes, soft towels, snacks, easy to prepare food, clothes I like, a high and tight haircut, and warm blankets. Story 91. It was not that I could not have it. I simply could not afford it. I bought the complete Wizard of Oz book set, all 14 volumes. Story 92. I wasn't allowed on trampolines. As an adult, my friends and I went to a trampoline park for my birthday one year. It was a lot of fun. Story 93. I wanted an original Nintendo and some games. It wasn't that I was forbidden to have one. We had so little money that asking would have been blatantly disrespectful to the rest of the family. We wore clothes made by my mom until we reached middle school. Story 94. It wasn't necessarily something I bought. It was the fact that once I became an adult, I could go to the beach, the mall, Chuck E. Cheese, mini-golf, arcades, and so on. My grandma did her best and put a roof over my siblings and me, but we didn't even have gas money to go anywhere fun. Story 95. Snacks and meals at amusement parks on the rare occasions I go. Story 96. There were a couple of science fiction books my dad had torn pages out of because of steamy sex scenes. When I went to college, I collected the books and read the removed scenes. To be fair, some were pretty explicit, so I do not blame him. Story 97. All the Lego sets. Glitter nail polish, which my dad hated. I bought Lisa Frank stationery on eBay, but my mom thought I would just waste it. Story 98. Albacore tuna. My mom insisted it was too expensive, though it really was not judging from what else we ate. I liked it better than chunk-like tuna, but that was not reason enough to buy it occasionally. Story 99. Concert tickets were a luxury. My parents did not have money for us to go. My mother asked why I spent money on frivolous things when I took my son to see NSYNC during the No Strings Attached tour. Now I get floor seats to whichever artists I want to see. My son's 18th birthday was at a Def Leppard concert because it was a bonding experience. She still does not understand. Story 100. These are mostly consoles and games I never had the chance to experience growing up. I just got a sweet deal on a Sega Genesis and Sega Compact Disc combo. I cannot wait to get it hooked up. Story 101. Music. My compact discs may be old school, but I will have them until I am gone. Story 102. Before adopting Howard, my mother had adopted 3 other cats: Midnight, Pusser, and Precious. Now I have Howard, a neutered male with a black coat and no tail. Story 103. Shoes. I bought hundreds of pairs, mostly boots. At some point I had to move and downsize and realized I had almost 400 pairs. I was sure I had already bought and gotten rid of at least 100 pairs by then. I put them all out in the living room and thought to myself, why had I done this? It was ridiculous. I did not wear many of them. Some were styles I would never wear. I realized I had never been allowed to wear what I wanted. No daughter of my mother, who loved pastel pink, was going to wear boots, black clothes, or Converse. I had to be feminine and wear dresses, sandals, and flats. The moment I had some freedom and my own money, I went crazy buying shoes. Anything that caught my eye for a moment, I bought. I still like boots and have a decent collection, but I don't think I'll ever go back to that insanity. Story 104. It was one of those 4-foot stuffed zoo snakes. For whatever reason, my mom would always be pissed when I got a new stuffed animal. My dad would sneak them in sometimes anyway. Story 105. Over 50 expensive watches, 165 guitars, and full-stack tube amplifiers. Story 106. Lucky Charms. I ate the whole box. That was plenty, though. I probably would have loved them as a kid, but they are actually quite gross. Story 107. Wide-leg JNCO brand jeans. We were too broke for them in middle school and high school, so I always got hand-me-downs. Those were 1980s and 1990s tight jeans, which I hated. Story 108. Air travel was rare for my ancestors. They only took a couple of flights in their lives. Story 109. I got a refurbished Nintendo Entertainment System and many games. I had an Atari 2600 and a Game Boy, so my parents didn't think I needed one. They were probably right, but it had some games I played at my friend's house that I really wanted. Story 110. It's not that I wasn't allowed to have it. It's something I've always wanted ever since I first saw Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost. Custom fangs. Story 111. I had gold and some really cool gold-plated guns. Unfortunately, I lost them all in a boat accident. Story 112. A dog. $40 at the shelter. She's the best lady I know. Story 113. When I was a kid, my parents were convinced Magic the Gathering cards were satanic, so I wasn't allowed to have any. Unfortunately, the game has become more like Fortnite, so collecting older cards is more common these days. Story 114. I finally bought myself fun t-shirts. I was not allowed to wear t-shirts with any designs. When I was an adult and married, my husband would not let me buy any Star Trek films because he did not like them. After he passed away, I bought the complete box set of Star Trek films in a photon torpedo. Story 115. A hamster, not Richard Gere. A Siberian dwarf hamster, to be specific. I always wanted one as a kid, but my folks wouldn't let me. Turned out they knew better. That little rascal ran on his wheel all night and kept me up. Spartacus was cute as hell, though. Story 116. Converse sneakers. And then another half-dozen pairs, but we will not talk about that. Story 117. I did not receive proper medical care. I was told whatever was wrong with me was not worth the $20 copay, so I did not go to the doctor much and almost died of pneumonia at age 15 because of it. Now I am 24 and in multiple organ failure due to my genetic conditions, which would not be happening if I had been diagnosed and treated as a child. Story 118. I was in my 20s, working a good job and helping a friend clear out his grandparents' house on a sun-drenched sand ridge in Central California. It had been hitting the low hundreds, and the work was miserable. made better only by camaraderie and grim determination. I stopped on my way over at the local market and snapped, buying Missile Pops and Sunshine Bakery lemon cooler cookies. Seemed like a good idea, but we rarely shopped like that growing up. The friends I was helping were kind of crunchy granola types, and I wasn't sure how they would respond. Oh my goodness, they were so good as an early afternoon break. They became a staple. Years later, they were moving far away, but my friend reported that Missile Pops got them through it. Story 119. Posters and decorations were not allowed when I was growing up because my dad worried about the property's value. I live with my mom now, and she lets me decorate, so being in my room feels less upsetting. Story 120. I bought a television and put it in my bedroom when I first moved out. I remember being jealous when I saw my friends with televisions. That did not last long, and now when my kids ask, I say no. Story 121. Pets. I started with one cat, then two, and later a dog. We have had many combinations over the years, and it has been worth every penny and every heartache when they leave us. I love giving my children the unconditional love of animals I never got to have. Story 122. I am 68 years old. I have had long hair most of my adult life because my mother refused to allow it when I was a child. Story 123. A diary. I picked a really girly-looking one. I did not have privacy to write my feelings, and I could not show emotions while growing up. Buying a diary in my mid-30s is a bit late but wonderful. Story 124. 3 beautiful dogs are the best thing ever. They make me so happy. Story 125. I bought Russian red lipstick from Makeup Art Cosmetics. It had been my ultimate dream to own something from Makeup Art Cosmetics. So for my 26th birthday, I saved up and gave myself one as a gift. Story 126. As a kid, I wanted a pinball machine, a Coke machine, and a piano. I had toy versions of each. When I bought my first house, I had all 3 in full adult size. Story 127. A 2-story house with a fireplace. I grew up in a 1-story house without a fireplace. Story 128. A pink Barbie sweater. Barbie dolls were my favorite toy, and my mom thought it was ridiculous to have anything with the brand on it. I gave my daughters a hand-me-down Barbie dream house. Story 129. Food and drink at events and when out and about were often disappointing. It was depressing how often I missed out on tasty items because someone packed a soggy sandwich or I had to share a single soft drink when I was a child. Story 130. Throughout my childhood, I repeatedly told my mother that my feet hurt. She made me wear shoes that were too small because the man at the only shoe store she would take me to always told her I wore a smaller size than I actually did. I don't know why she believed a stranger over her own child when I told her I was in pain. Now my feet are permanently deformed, but at least they don't hurt anymore. Story 131. I could never wear yellow clothing as a kid because my mom hated yellow. I prefer good quality cotton jeans rather than cheap polyester ones. I can have potato chips and dip whenever I want. I have dessert with lunch. Story 132. I took karate lessons and earned my black belt. Even if it is not ladylike, Mom, nobody messes with me now. Story 133. I wear extremely plain-looking clothes. All my t-shirts are black, gray, or white. I only buy dark wash jeans and khaki or black pants, and my long-sleeve button-ups are usually dark and single-colored. I have one black denim jacket and one black and one khaki sport coat. When I was a child, my parents forced me to wear extremely loud and garish clothing because they thought it was stylish. I mean shiny rayon shirts with bizarre patterns in at least 4 colors, Jordache jeans with multiple patches in different colors, and even my shoes were always brightly colored Nike shoes or Eddie Bauer boots with mismatched color panels. Once I was making my own money, I swore I'd never wear anything with a pattern again. Story 134. I always keep spares of the things I use. We were very poor. Story 135. When I was 8, I told myself that when I grew up I would buy cake icing and eat it out of the container because no one would stop me. I no longer want to do that. Story 136. Expensive dress-up stuff. I grew up in the 1980s and was the youngest and only daughter. My parents expected typical girly girl behavior. Comic books, video games, and Dungeons and Dragons did not fit that mold, so when I asked for anything related to them, everyone was disappointed. As an adult, I have found people I can be weird with, such as comic conventions, Renaissance fairs, festivals, and so on. It's my money, and if I want to go and pretend to be someone else, I will. Is that any different from pretending to be a productive employee every weekday? Story 137. Braces. My parents told me I did not deserve them. I certainly did. I am proud of myself. Story 138. My parents bought into the 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s panic. They honestly believed that every plane would fall out of the sky and that every foreigner wanted to murder tourists. Ironically, they were so worried about travel. My car was broken into in my own driveway, and there was a shooting 2 blocks away a month before our trip. We had an amazing trip. The only bad foreigners we met were the cows and sheep that decided to block the road. I had never gotten a death stare from a cow before then. Story 139. Other than alcohol, Oreos. I still like them, but they are just not as good when you are grown up. Story 140. When I started earning money, I bought a computer and a video home system recorder because my parents could not afford them when I was a child. Story 141. A garage full of motorcycles, including a Honda Monkey like the one I wanted so desperately when I was 5 or 6 years old after seeing one while camping. Story 142. Lucky Charms and other sugary cereals are my favorites, to be honest, but I eat them only once or twice a year. Story 143. Video game systems. I have every console made in the last 25 years. Story 144. This is a handheld gaming device. The Steam Deck is the best piece of equipment I have bought in a very long time. Story 145. I stare fondly at a large collection of 1 hours 87 minutes, scale model trains. A gaming computer with an extensive Steam library is the real answer, though. Story 146. Dogs, alcohol, cigarettes, a car, a house, a bed, and decent clothes. Story 147. Fireworks. I got them out of my system after a few years, but when I first left home and escaped the house rules, I loved them. Story 148. Lunchables and fun ice cream cones. We only got popsicles growing up. We probably had brand name cereal and brand name versions of many things at least once. I refused to go back to bagged cereal. A Build-A-Bear or two. Story 149. The Buccaneer board game belonged to my much older brother, and I was not allowed to touch it. Story 150. A whole birthday cake, not just a single slice. I share it with my siblings and friends. Story 151. I bought a motorcycle when I turned 18, but I sold it after I graduated from college because I was nearly hit too many times. I bought a trampoline when I moved into my first apartment. It was fun at first but lost its appeal. A friend seriously injured her ankle at a party I hosted. The trampoline eventually dry rotted, so I dismantled it and threw it away. Story 152. Lego bricks. It is not that I could not have them as a child. They simply did not have the cool sets available now, and the early theme sets were aimed at boys. Story 153. Monster High dolls. My grandmother once made a snide comment about buying them for me when I was about 13. I had some then, and I got rid of them out of shame. When the original reproductions came out, I bought all 4. Story 154. My husband bought me sock and boppers because I always wanted them as a child and the commercial stuck with me. I wanted many other things, but I'll get them in time. Story 155. My father was a United States Marine during the Vietnam War, serving 3 tours of 18 months each. He owned a shotgun and a revolver for home defense. He never hunted, but he occasionally attended turkey shoots. He suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder and always said that guns are not the answer when someone is angry. Sadly, he took his own life in 2006. Story 156. A Game Boy. My parents refused it at every turn in my childhood. I got one this year. Story 157. The 35-year-old Range Rover was unreliable. I had driven a Nissan Sentra for 40 years and wanted a cool car. Story 158. When cable television service came to our neighborhood, the salesperson was so pushy he made my dad angry. My dad swore we would never have cable. I started babysitting as soon as I obtained my cardiopulmonary resuscitation certification. That way I could spend Friday and Saturday nights at someone else's house and stay up late to watch cable television. When I moved into my first apartment, I bought a video cassette recorder and subscribed to cable television. Story 159. Figures, not dirty ones, but the cool posable kind. My collection is small and not properly arranged yet. It consists of characters from things I enjoy, and I hope to create a large scene of them interacting someday. I also use other items as makeshift props, such as a small plastic bonsai tree in a planter for a figure to sit on. Story 160. We didn't have much money, and video games were considered only for boys. After my partner and I got together, we began to enjoy both hobbies. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.